What happens when you stop chasing? When you stop stretching your hand toward people who never once reached for yours? What happens when you walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of peace? When you finally realize you don't need anyone to complete you? It's strange. The moment you no longer beg for acceptance, the world begins to turn its head. The silence you once feared becomes a power they can't ignore. It's almost ironic. When you needed them most, they looked away. When you finally don't, suddenly, everybody wants you. But this isn't about arrogance. It's not about revenge. It's about a quiet revolution that happens inside. A deep realization that your worth was never tied to who stayed or who left. You were always whole, always complete. The difference is, you just didn't believe it. And so the question lingers. Why is it that when you finally release the need for anyone, the world begins to chase you? We are raised in a world that whispers in our ear from the moment we are children. You must earn love. You must earn respect. You must become something before you are worthy of being seen. This message hides in the compliments we receive when we achieve something, in the silence when we fail, and in the way society rewards those who perform while quietly ignoring those who simply exist. Over time, this belief shapes our entire identity. We begin to think our value is conditional, dependent on what others give us in return, and so we learn to chase. We chase friendships, relationships, validation from strangers, approval from family. It's an exhausting pursuit, one that never ends, because the more you try to please, the more you signal to the world that you are incomplete. People can sense it, the hunger, the desperation, the invisible plea in your presence, and it pushes them away, even when your only desire was to be accepted. Desperation is a strange force. It disguises itself as love, as loyalty, as devotion, but underneath it carries fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of being unseen, the fear of existing without applause, and people instinctively recoil from it. They may not even know why, but when you lean too hard into another person, it creates imbalance. They feel suffocated by your need. Your energy tells them that you have placed them above yourself, and as much as they might enjoy the attention for a moment, it subtly communicates weakness. Weakness in the realm of human interaction often becomes something others exploit or abandon. This is not because people are cruel by nature, but because we are wired to value what is scarce, not what is always available. In the meantime, let us tell you about the odor, the unpassed on. Cell is not made of silk. The more you make yourself too accessible, too eager, too willing, the more they take it for granted, as if your presence has lost its weight. Machiavelli, centuries ago, observed that people respect necessity more than kindness. A ruler who bends too much for love will not hold power, but one who commands through self-possession creates both respect and fear. While this was written in the language of politics, it applies eerily well to the personal realm. When you are desperate, you hand away your authority, your dignity, your natural strength. But when you no longer need anyone, you suddenly radiate a different aura, one of choice, not compulsion. It is not about arrogance, nor about turning your heart cold. It is about shifting from dependence to sovereignty, about standing as your own center rather than spinning around someone else's orbit. In psychological terms, this is the difference between attachment anxiety and secure independence. One is grasping and restless, the other calm and magnetic, and people, consciously or unconsciously, are always more drawn to the latter. It's important to recognize how culture itself feeds this illusion of needing others for worth. Advertisements thrive on our insecurities, telling us that we must buy something to feel beautiful, desirable, complete. Movies and novels often glorify the idea that salvation comes through romance, that someone out there will finally make us whole. Even social media algorithms reward those who perform for attention, as if likes and views could fill the emptiness inside. We absorb these narratives and begin to internalize them as truth. And then, when reality doesn't align, when people do not respond to our efforts, we feel rejected, unworthy, broken. But the error was not in us. It was in the belief we swallowed. The belief that worth is external, not internal. The belief that we must constantly prove ourselves to be valued. This misconception is what keeps so many people in silent despair, always chasing a recognition, that was never meant to define them in the first place. Detachment is not about not caring. It is about caring from a place of freedom rather than dependency. When you no longer hinge your sense of self on someone else's response, you begin to move differently. You speak without the hidden agenda of impressing. You give without expecting repayment. You show up because you choose to, not because you fear the consequences of not being seen. That kind of presence is rare and therefore powerful. People are drawn to it not because you are performing, but because you are whole in yourself. And ironically, the very thing you once chased begins to flow toward you. Attention, respect, admiration. They come uninvited, because others can feel the gravity of someone who does not beg for them. It is a paradox. The less you need it, the more it arrives. This principle is echoed in psychology, particularly in the study of human attraction and relationships. Research shows that people are naturally drawn to individuals who display high levels of self-sufficiency and inner stability. It's not about rejecting connection altogether. It's about the energy behind the connection. Someone who clings, who panics at the idea of distance, creates stress in the bond. But someone who can stand on their own 2 feet, who enjoys companionship without collapsing into dependency, offers safety. They offer the kind of relationship that is chosen, not demanded. And humans instinctively respect what is chosen. Think of it like oxygen. When it is abundant, you don't think about it. But when it's scarce, when it carries weight, you notice every breath. The same is true of people. When you are not constantly offering yourself for free, your presence begins to feel like oxygen. They realize its value only when it's not overflowing. The deeper truth is that desperation signals a lack of self-love, and when others see you lacking it, they unconsciously mirror it back. They treat you with the same disregard you treat yourself. On the other hand, when you carry yourself with quiet self-respect, others take note. They feel the boundary, the dignity, the balance. And that presence reshapes the dynamics entirely. This is why so many people discover that when they finally stop chasing, when they finally let go of the desperate need to be wanted, suddenly the invitations, the attention, the pursuit begins. Not because the world has changed, but because they have. And when you change at that level, the world cannot help but adjust its orbit around you. There are moments everyone remembers. Moments when the weight of invisibility feels unbearable. You send the message first, your fingers tapping with hesitation, only to watch the minutes, then the hours slip by without response. You show up for people in their storms, listening to their pain, holding their silence. But when it is you who breaks, the world seems strangely quiet. It is in these experiences that you start to notice a pattern. That no matter how much love you pour out, the cup in your own hand remains empty. At first, you tell yourself it is bad timing, that people are busy, that maybe you are asking for too much. But deep down, a seed of doubt begins to grow. You start to question if maybe your worth is smaller than theirs, if maybe your presence simply does not matter in the way you hoped it did. We live in a culture that often glorifies the giver, the selfless one, the person who bends until they break. Yet few talk about the loneliness that grows inside those who constantly give. You keep telling yourself that loyalty and consistency will eventually be noticed, that the more you give, the closer people will draw to you. But instead, something else happens. The harder you try to hold on, the more they slip away. The more they slip away, the more attention you give, the less valuable it seems. And the heartbreak is not always in words spoken aloud. It is in the subtle dismissals, the long pauses, the conversations where your voice is drowned by their indifference. It leaves you carrying a heavy truth that you cannot force anyone to recognize what they do not want to see. And that realization cuts sharper than any rejection. The turning point rarely arrives in a grand, dramatic moment. More often it sneaks in quietly, on a night when you are too tired to keep reaching. You stop checking your phone. You stop rehearsing the perfect words that might make them stay. You sit with yourself in silence, maybe for the first time without trying to escape it. And something shifts. The silence you once feared, the one you thought would consume you, begins to feel like a strange kind of safety. It is uncomfortable at first, like sitting in a room with a stranger, until you realize that stranger is you. You notice how heavy you had been leaning on others to define your joy, your peace, your identity. And in that noticing you begin to reclaim pieces of yourself that you had long abandoned in the pursuit of being wanted. But freedom never arrives without grief. There is a sharp ache in admitting that some people you loved with your whole being never once tried to meet you halfway. You feel the sting of wasted nights, the countless times you convinced yourself that maybe tomorrow they would see your worth. And when that hope finally dissolves, you are left raw, stripped of illusions. Yet this is where the transformation begins, for in the ashes of disappointment you discover something you never knew you had. Resilience. You learn that solitude does not destroy you. It does not swallow you whole. Instead, it introduces you to parts of yourself you had forgotten to love. In the space left behind by others, you meet your own strength. There is irony in the way people respond to this quiet shift. The very ones who once overlooked you begin to return, their curiosity piqued by the distance you now hold. They ask where you have been, as if they hadn't been the ones who disappeared first. They notice your absence, suddenly aware of the gravity you carried when you were always present. And it feels surreal, almost cruel, that only when you stop needing them do they finally seem to need you. It is not that you have changed in essence. You are still the same soul, the same heart. What changed is the energy behind your presence. You are no longer giving to prove your worth. You are no longer stretching yourself thin to be chosen. You are simply standing, rooted in yourself, and that rootedness has become magnetic. These experiences reveal a deeper truth about human connection. People often do not value what they do not have to fight for. When you were always available, your love became background noise like air, necessary but unnoticed. When you pulled back, when you found peace in your own silence, suddenly they realized the absence of oxygen. The tragedy is that it often takes losing you for others to see what they had. But the gift in that tragedy is your awakening. You begin to understand that being unseen by them was never proof that you were invisible. It was only proof that they lacked the vision to see. And in recognizing this, the anger begins to fade, replaced by a quiet acceptance. You stop asking why they didn't value you, and start asking why you ever needed their validation to begin with. Looking back, these relatable experiences, painful as they are, become the markers of your transformation. The unanswered texts, the overlooked kindness, the empty rooms where you sat with your own thoughts. They become symbols of the journey from dependency to self-discovery. They teach you that loneliness is not always a curse. Sometimes it is the doorway to freedom. They teach you that you do not lose yourself when others ignore you. You only lose yourself when you abandon your own worth. And slowly you begin to realize that the people who truly matter will not need to be chased. They will meet you where you are, not because you begged, but because they see the light in you and choose it freely. And in that moment of clarity, you finally understand the paradox, that when you no longer need anyone to complete you, the world cannot help but be drawn to the wholeness you have become. Awakening does not arrive with applause. It is not loud, nor is it a grand announcement to the world. It comes quietly, like dawn breaking after a long night, when you realize that the very silence you once dreaded has become your companion. There is something almost sacred about this stillness, because it is in these moments of aloneness that you feel your own presence without distortion. You begin to see that the world never truly abandoned you. You abandoned yourself in the endless chase to be wanted. And when you return to yourself, when you finally hear the sound of your own breath, there is a calm that begins to grow. It is a strength that does not demand recognition, but one that simply radiates like a lantern in darkness, unwavering in its glow. This is the kind of power that cannot be faked, because it is born from scars that have closed and wounds that have taught you what survival feels like. The scars themselves become a language. Every disappointment, every dismissal, every quiet night when tears blurred your vision becomes etched into your soul, not as weakness, but as proof. Proof that you endured. Proof that you did not break when you thought you would. And with time, those scars begin to shine, not in a way that makes you flawless, but in a way that makes you unshakable. They are reminders that the storms you feared most have already passed, and yet here you remain. This awareness changes the way you carry yourself. You no longer seek to hide your pain or mask your solitude. Instead, you wear them as a silent crown. The crown of someone who has learned to walk through fire without needing anyone to hold their hand. And that crown speaks louder than words ever could. There is an imagery to inner strength that cannot be ignored. It is like standing in the middle of a vast empty field with nothing to shield you and realizing you are not afraid. You look up at the sky, wide and endless, and instead of feeling small, you feel expansive, as if you are part of it. Solitude becomes your cathedral, and silence becomes your hymn. You begin to realize that strength is not about having power over others, but about having power over the chaos within. When the noise of the world falls away, and when the opinions of others no longer hold you hostage, you find yourself listening to a softer voice, the one inside you, the one that was drowned out for years. That voice reminds you that you are enough, that you always were, and once you hear it clearly, you can never unhear it. This awakening shifts your relationships in ways you never expected. You are no longer desperate for attention because you know your worth does not fluctuate with someone else's affection. You no longer fear rejection because you understand that rejection does not define your value. It only reveals someone's inability to see it. And when you carry yourself with this certainty, people respond differently. They feel the steadiness in your presence, the lack of need, the absence of hunger. It draws them in because it is rare. Most people walk through life with empty cups, begging for others to fill them. But you have filled your own, and it overflows naturally. That overflow is what people are attracted to, not because you are trying to impress, but because you have stopped trying altogether. You are simply being, and in that being you have become magnetic. What makes this strength profound is that it is invisible to the untrained eye. From the outside, it looks like calm, like simplicity, like someone who is at peace with themselves. But inside, it is a fortress, built stone by stone, memory by memory, failure by failure. Each time you thought you could not endure and yet did, another wall was built. Each time you sat in solitude and chose not to run, another foundation was laid, and now you stand within this fortress, not as a prisoner, but as a sovereign. You know that storms may come again, people may leave again, and life may test you again. But the walls you have built are strong enough to withstand them. They are not walls that keep love out, but walls that ensure you will never again collapse in on yourself when love fails to appear. There is also a light that comes with awakening, a glow that is not visible in mirrors but felt in presence. It is the kind of light that others sense when they are around you, even if they cannot explain it. They feel calmer in your company, safer in your energy, as if your silence itself carries reassurance. And perhaps it does, because your silence is no longer the silence of emptiness, but the silence of fullness. You have nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to beg for. You have become a presence rather than a performance. This shift is subtle, yet it changes everything. You are no longer at the mercy of the world's tides. You have become your own anchor, and in that steadiness others cannot help but be drawn, because deep down, every soul craves the kind of stability you now embody. The greatest strength of all, however, is the realization that you do not need strength to be loved. You do not need to impress, to earn, to outshine. You only need to be, and to belong to yourself first. When you awaken to this truth, you stop measuring your worth by external scales. You stop keeping score of who stayed and who left. You stop seeking validation in the eyes of those who never truly saw you. Instead, you return home to yourself, again and again, until home is no longer a place you fear, but a place you cherish, and that is when the paradox reveals itself. Everyone wants you, but you no longer need them. The desire of others becomes secondary to the peace you already carry inside, and this is what it means to awaken, to no longer search for light in others, but to realize the light was burning within you all along. The paradox of life is that the moment you stop reaching, the world begins to reach for you. When you let go of the hunger to be wanted, you step into a rare form of freedom that few ever experience. This freedom is not about isolation or rejecting love, but about no longer needing it to feel whole. It is about realizing that you are already complete, that your worth was never missing, only hidden beneath years of doubt and dependency. And when this realization takes root, everything about your presence changes. You walk differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. You speak differently, not to persuade or impress, but simply to express. People feel this difference, even if they cannot explain it. They sense that you are no longer tied to their approval, and ironically, it is this detachment that makes them crave your presence even more. It is not because you play a game of withholding, but because you have finally found peace within yourself, and peace is magnetic. The real revolution is not fought in the outer world, but within the inner one. The greatest wars are not battles between nations, but battles between your own fear and your own truth. For years, fear tells you that you are not enough, that you must chase validation, that you must prove your existence by how loudly others applaud. But awakening replaces fear with clarity. It whispers that your worth has always been there, quiet and patient, waiting for you to see it. And when you finally see it, you cannot be enslaved by the opinions of others anymore. That is the inner transformation that changes everything. Outwardly, your life may look the same job, same relationships, same routines, but inwardly, everything has shifted. You are no longer a beggar for love. You are no longer a shadow of someone else's recognition. You are whole, and that wholeness reshapes the way you engage with the world around you. This is why people suddenly want you when you no longer need them. They are not responding to manipulation, but to truth. They are sensing the gravity of someone who stands firmly in themselves. It is the same principle that governs nature. A mountain does not beg to be noticed, yet it draws eyes upward. The ocean does not plead for attention, yet its depth commands respect. In the same way, a person who has found their inner stillness does not have to chase affection. It comes to them naturally, because the energy they radiate is rare. And it is rare because most people are still chasing, still clinging, still terrified of being unseen. When they meet someone who is not bound by that fear, it feels like encountering something sacred, something they wish they could carry themselves. You become a mirror, not of their weaknesses, but of what they could become, if they too learn to stop needing. The call here is not to become untouchable or cold, but to become free. Free to love without attachment, to give without expectation, to walk away without bitterness. Freedom does not mean you stop caring. It means you no longer collapse when care is not returned. It means you can hold affection in your hands without letting it become your lifeline. This is the essence of inner power, not dominance over others, but liberation from the chains within yourself. You stop asking who will stay, who will love me, who will see me, and instead you begin asking, how deeply can I honor myself? How fully can I inhabit my own life? And when you live from this place, your relationships change. They are no longer built on fear or bargaining, but on choice, mutual respect, and genuine recognition. The people who come to you then come not because you need them, but because they see your light and want to share in it. The journey to this realization is not easy, but it is worth it. Every tear, every night of silence, every moment of feeling invisible becomes part of the foundation that makes you strong enough to stand alone. And once you can stand alone, you will never again be at the mercy of someone else's presence. You will love differently, not because you are guarded, but because you no longer confuse attention with worth. You will live differently, not because the world has changed, but because your perception has. You will finally understand that being wanted is not the prize you thought it was. The real prize is knowing that you are whole, even when nobody is watching, even when nobody calls, even when nobody chooses you. That wholeness is unshakable, and once it becomes yours, it can never be taken away. So the message is simple, though the journey is not. Stop chasing the world, and it will begin to chase you. Stop begging for love, and you will discover it flowing toward you in unexpected ways. Stop needing anyone to complete you, and you will finally realize that you have been complete all along. The real revolution is not loud, not dramatic. It is quiet, like a soul returning home to itself, and that is the most powerful transformation you can ever experience. Everyone may want you when you no longer need them, but the truth is, you no longer care who wants you, because the only thing that matters in the end is that you finally want yourself.